So when I was in college, I badly needed extra money because I was paying my own way through. I came from a poor background. I had to take out student loans. And not only did I have to pay for myself, but I also was taking care of my dad, and I needed to buy food, and I needed to pay for transportation expenses. And of course, what I found on the internet was useless surveys that make like $1 to $3 per hour. Also, I found stuff like Amazon FBA courses, Shopify courses, drop shipping, all this sort of thing where, yes, you know, once in a while, you might find a good course where you can actually make money from it, but it's probably still gonna take like a year, and you're gonna have to invest a bunch of your own money up front. And the truth is, most of those courses are either not that good or they're straight up made by fake gurus. So I didn't wanna go down that route, of course. And then there was also the obvious stuff like doing Uber or delivering food or donating your plasma. Now, of course, I did do a little bit of that sort of thing. Like I donated plasma, for instance, but I don't really like needles, and you can only donate plasma once every 2 weeks or something. And it's capped in terms of how much money you can make. So I looked elsewhere in order to make extra money. Then I finally stumbled upon a way of making money which is perfect for college students, and I was able to make over $100 per hour. And surprisingly, this method is especially good for college students. You actually have an advantage if you're in college, and I'll reveal exactly how that works in just a moment. And yes, this is something that anyone can do, but I actually don't recommend doing it the exact same way I did. And again, I'll explain exactly why that is. But let's go ahead and start with the first one on the list, which is genealogy. And by the way, I'm gonna be ranking all of these with a student money score from 1 to 10, with 10 being the best. And I'm gonna be talking about really important factors like how much money you can make, how easily you can get into it, how long it takes to get into it. So basically like the barrier to entry, as well as what value the skills that you learn are going to give you later on in life. So about 5 years ago, I went to a family gathering, and one of my uncles was deeply studying sort of like the family history. And this was something that was really interesting to me because I honestly didn't know that much about my family history. So for instance, my last name is Humison. It's actually not hummus, believe it or not. That's just my nickname here on the channel. It's Humison, which means son of hummus. So I always thought that I was sort of like a Viking ancestor because that's very common with people of Scandinavian descent, right? So son of Peter is Peterson, Johnson, etc. But what I found out is apparently some of my Viking ancestors actually went to Scotland and decided to settle there. And all of this was found out by my uncle, who did extensive research on this sort of thing, and he hired a bunch of people to help him. And the people that he hired were genealogists. And believe it or not, it's actually not all that hard to get into genealogy. So for instance, these types of jobs can be found on different freelancing sites like Upwork or Fiverr. And oftentimes you might even get hired by somebody to investigate their family. And in some cases, if you're already in a family where there's a lot of people who are interested in this, they may fund your investigation. Now, if you look at Glassdoor, genealogists make about $80,000 on average, which is really good. And this is something that you can actually do part-time while you're still in school. And many of the requests that you get when it comes to genealogy are going to be incredibly simple. It's basically just looking people up on a website. Now, some of the requests are going to require a lot more investigative skill and a lot more time. And in those cases, you'll probably make a lot more money. But yeah, this is actually a really good one, and I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 money score. Next on the list is going to be tutoring. And this is one where when I was in college, I actually started doing this. So when I was in college, I wanted to become a pharmacist. And in order to get into pharmacy school, I had to take this test called the PCAT. That's the Pharmacy College Admissions Test. Now, I ended up studying extremely hard for this test. I also did a ton of research to figure out what the best resources out there were, because to be honest with you, a lot of the resources that most people were studying turned out to not be very good. So I ended up taking the test. I scored extremely well on it. I almost had a perfect score. And my study partners that I was studying with told a bunch of other people about my score. And all of a sudden, I started getting hit up by a bunch of people who wanted me to tell them how I scored so well on the test. So the first few people I went ahead, I told them everything I knew for free. But it got to the point where there were so many people asking for my time that I started charging money. And at first I wasn't charging all that much money at all, $30 an hour, something like that. But then as more and more people asked me, I started charging more and more money. And eventually it got to the point where I was charging over $100 an hour. I believe the best that it ever got was about $180 an hour I was making. And all of this was because I scored really well on a super random niche test. Now, how does this apply to you? Well, if you have taken a test like the ACT, SAT, and you've scored well, this could be really good for you. But how about AP tests or IB tests in high school, right? So let's say you took the AP chemistry test or something like that, and you scored really well on it. That's something you could tutor people for. Or let's say you got into a college that a bunch of people want to get into. That's another thing you could tutor people for. Or let's say you're taking the MCAT or the LSAT because you want to get into medical school or law school, that's also something you could tutor people for. And also, if you're good at a subject that most people aren't good at, like mathematics or organic chemistry, again, that's something you could charge a lot of money for. And let's say you're not good at any of that stuff. At the very least, you can tutor people in English, because I assume that you are listening to this, you can understand English, and you can get paid pretty good money for that as well. So yeah, tutoring is a phenomenal way to make money in college, maybe the best possible way. You can make money right off the bat doing this. This gets a 10 out of 10 money score. Next on the list is going to be an online influencer. And this is one that I see around on YouTube quite a bit, of course. And of course, this is something where I started it myself. The first video that I ever uploaded to YouTube was all the way back in like 2010. And I played this game called RuneScape. Now, a lot of people might know RuneScape. I was really into it for many years. I probably wasted a lot of time on it, but there's also a lot of good memories I had there. But yeah, I would PK people on RuneScape, which is basically where you fight other people. And then I would upload those videos to YouTube. Now, I never planned on becoming like a famous YouTuber or anything like that. I basically just did it for fun and to be able to show my friends some of my best PKs. And I didn't start making any real money on YouTube until about 2020, right? So this is something that I did for a hobby. I also watched like thousands of hours of YouTube. And then eventually I started doing it myself and I ended up making money from it. Now, one thing that I will say is there has never been an easier time to become an online influencer. It is much easier now than it was 5 years ago, for instance. And there's also never been an easier time to actually make money as an online influencer. Most of the time, in like 2015, for instance, people who uploaded videos, even the ones who were extremely popular, were not making enough money to actually quit their job and do it full time. But now it's actually quite easy for you to do this comparatively. But with that being said, this is not something that you can do very easily. But there are going to be some people watching this video that are in a position where they would be able to grow relatively fast. And let me tell you who those types of people would be. So